Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Live from My Drum Room. My guest today is legendary drummer Rod Morgenstein. And in this episode, we do a deep dive into Rod's long and incredible career, over 50 years, including his work with the Dixie Dregs, Steve Morse Band, of course, Winger, the Jelly Jam, and much, much more. As a well-known and respected author and educator, he's also invented several drum products, including this one. This is called the Wing Thing, and every drummer should have one of these. So it's a great episode. You're going to hear some music and a great discussion. So come along for the ride. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the other side. And it really is a great honor to welcome Rod Morgenstein to Live from My Drum Room. Welcome, Rod.
Hello there, John.
It's good to see you, my friend. Man, thank you for being here today with me. Lots of folks watching. It's so great to have you here. So thank you.
Oh, you bet. My pleasure.
Yeah, and you're officially my first left-handed guest. So I feel like, there's strength in numbers for us guys, for us lefties. So.
Yeah, I feel honored.
I feel honored. I want to tell you now, I reminded you this, and I wouldn't have expected you to remember this, but I first met you, and I can't believe it'll be 40 years this summer when you came to Boston to do a clinic at Freddie G's drum shop in Malden, Mass. And I was working there with Freddie. And I was so excited that you were coming to do a clinic. And I just remember I was getting ready to move to LA, and you were so nice. I was a huge fan of your drumming, obviously. And, it was the early days of me meeting famous drummers. I'll just put it that way. And you were so kind. And so I told you I was moving to LA, and I'm thinking, as I look back, you're probably thinking, oh, good luck to you, kid. Like you and everybody else. Yeah. Hey, Rod, I'm moving out to LA to be a drummer. And you're probably going, yeah, okay. But you were so encouraging about it. You were so, hey, that's great. That's really great.
Hey, you know what? Someone has to succeed, right? And so I remember doing a drum clinic it was the late 80s. So I was in the band Winger, and we were kind of riding high at the time. And it was in Louisville, Kentucky. And a teenage kid in the audience asked a question when I was taking questions. And he said, what should I do? Should I stay in Louisville, or should I move to LA or New York? I said, well, that's a great question. If you stay in Louisville, you'll be the big fish in the little sea. If you move to LA, New York, Nashville, you're going to be the little guy in the big. So years later, I ran into him, and he said, hey, Rod, I've been meaning to thank you all these years because I moved to LA and I got in the band Kingdom Come.
Oh, wow.
Right, which their first album went platinum.
Yeah, they were big.
Been selling over 1 million copies. And then from that band, he ended up the drummer in the Scorpions.
Yes.
So it does happen.
Yeah.
The odds can be a little tricky, but with the right attitude, and if you make sure that you just keep yourself out there, moving and shaking and socializing, meeting people, and hopefully, getting up there on stage in any and every club that has an open mic night.
Yeah.
I've heard so many stories from drummers how that is how they got their first gigs. I have a question for you. So with that clinic at Freddie G's, was that the clinic that had 3 of us doing clinics, Danny Gottlieb and Joey Franco?
No, that was after I'd moved. Freddie told me because it was just you that first time in the summer. And then I think you came back to do another one, or maybe I know Danny happened to be in town. Freddie told me this story that all 3 of you guys played. And by the way, Tom Myers, speaking of clinics, our old friend Tom Myers, who was, for everybody watching at home, was the man that ran Premier Drums in the US for many years, is watching right now. And he made those clinics happen. He was the guy that sponsored all those, that helped put it all together. So a big hand for Tom Myers.
Yeah, he was. And in fact, so it was the next drum clinic when you had already moved to LA, that I did with Danny Gottlieb and Joey Franco, that Tom was there. And
Oh, okay.
he was also there with Jeff Hasselberger, who did advertising for Premiere and other companies. And after the clinic, me, Tom, and Jeff got in their car and drove to Maine and got to Vic's in the middle of the night, Vic Firth's home
Oh,
on the
wow.
ocean in Maine. And the next morning, the four of us went out on Vic's boat.
Oh,
One
man.
of the most memorable days of my life. And I know Tom is smiling ear to ear right now because he remembers all the silly stuff that one out. That was such a beautiful 2 days, actually, the clinic and seeing Dave
Ah,
and Joey Franco, who's a friend. Both of them are friends, and then spending the day with Vic Firth.
yeah. And I had made a note because I think most people that watch this show regularly know that Vic's daughter Kelly is my wife. Vic was my father-in-law and a dear, dear friend. And for as before Kelly and I were dating, when I would see you at the Modern Drummer Festival every year at the NAMM show, and we'd say hello. Um, I've been such a big fan of yours, and unfortunately, we worked together for a minute when I was at Drum Workshop. I don't know if you remember that, but I moved to LA and I worked for Simmons and then Drum Workshop, and we had Dynacord, and I think you might have been using some of
That's
the Dynacord stuff, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow.
I've like this is like 1986, Rod, 86, 87, and I remember seeing you at the NAMM show in Atlanta, and you played I think with either the Dregs or Steve Morris. And I reintroduced myself to you, and I was kind of like by then I was like working in the business, but I was kind of like the little kid standing by just going, "There's Rod Morgenstein," like but and you played your butt off that night at a concert, and it was just like, wow, man, like this is, but anyway, I digress. But Kelly and her mom Olga and her sister Tracy adore you. They just the whole family, and Vic, of course, loved you. And I have to say hello on behalf of everybody. So
And yet, please send a big hug back to all of them. I
I sure
love
will.
all.
I will. I will. Yeah, Kelly. In fact, I will. I will. I know you'll take this in the right way. That when we would see you at NAMM shows and places, she would say to me something like, "I know you have a little crush on Rod, a little." And I'm like, well, he's a great drummer. He's left-handed. We're the same height. I mean, come on, the
That's
similarities continue. So, oh man. Anyway, but let's talk about kind of jumping back to the beginning of when you started. Who were some of the influences when you first were you Ringo or
It started with seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1964. It was
yeah
a life-changing moment. My parents and my sister Carol and I were sitting around the TV, and then Ed Sullivan said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles." And then I forget what song they played, and later on the show they played another song. I turned to my family and said, "That's what I want to be when I grow up." And I never really looked back. And so, not long after that television show, my dad took me to New York City to Manny's Music and bought me a Ludwig bass drum, snare drum, and 10-inch cymbal, which I still have all of them,
wow
um, which I can talk about later. Um, and they then also hooked me up with a private drum set teacher by the name of Howie Mann, who was a big band drummer in the 50s. Wonderful guy. And as they saw my interest and excitement not waning, then
yeah
they bought me a ride cymbal, then a hi-hat, then a rack tom, then a floor tom, and I had, you know, the same
yeah
the same drum set as Ringo in terms of being Ludwig and a snare, rack, floor, and a kick drum. So, I was 11 years old at the time, and then I gravitated towards Jimi Hendrix and Cream that each had, I guess, jazz, progressive fusion
yeah
style players in Mitch Mitchell and Ginger Baker. Mitch Mitchell to this day might be my favorite drummer. There's something so special about him and players from back then where rock and roll was being written then. There were no rules, and
Right.
kind of anything went. And so that's why every band and artist had a different sound, and nobody put restraints on these drummers
Right.
like are put on many drummers in the rock realm these days. So Mitch Mitchell, Ginger Baker, and then when Jethro Tull hit the scene, Clive Bunker became, I mean,
Yeah.
he was my idol. I've gotten to meet some of these people, in my career and feel like a 10-year-old kid when I
Wow.
met them. It doesn't matter what age you are. When someone was an idol of yours, they're always going to kind of give you that same feeling, no matter what age you are. So then after and John Bonham, so Led Zeppelin and Jethro Tull, then a couple of years after that, the Mahavishnu Orchestra came on the scene. And I'd probably have to say, if I have to point to one band or one record that turned my world upside down and sent me on a path, it was the Inner Mounting Flame, the first album by the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Yeah.
And nobody had heard drumming the likes of Billy Cobham then. So, he was a military rudimental drummer that got into the jazz rock scene. So he was a hard-hitting guy, but a hard-hitting guy with a lot of chops and a lot of interesting math in his head. And so put the two of those together, and you had this new thing that
Yeah.
hadn't existed before. And so most of the Mahavishnu Orchestra's music ventured into all kinds of time signatures. And I wore out the grooves of that record and the following record, Birds of Fire, figuring out all of the time signatures. And,
Yeah.
and also copying his legs, um, and then from there, that sort of opened me up to the world of jazz. And then Tony Williams opened my eyes to a whole lot of other things. And so at the time of the Mahavishnu Orchestra, I was going to Nassau Community College, a local community college, a half hour from where I grew up on Long Island. And when I was finishing my second year, the one teacher who was a mentor said to me, "Hey, are you planning on finishing your undergraduate bachelor's degree?" And I said, "Yeah, I just don't know where to go." And he said, "Go to the University of Miami." And I said, "I didn't even know they have a music school." He said, "No, I went there and they have a wonderful music program. You should go there." So I went to the University of Miami, and it was there in an improv class on piano because I was thinking, "Ooh, do I maybe want to be a jazz pianist instead of a drummer?" Uh, I was in this class and I was admiring this one guitarist among a dozen guitarists who, with the exception of him, they all played big, fat, hollow body Gibson guitars with all the treble off. And this one guy, long blonde hair, like this really beat up Fender Telecaster body with a Stratocaster neck and Gibson frets and all these pickups on it. It was Steve Morse, right?
Yeah.
And the teacher was always yelling at him because he didn't sound like a bebop guitarist, but you could tell he was just a monstrous player. And so one day he came over to me and he said, "Hey, somebody told me you play the drums." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a better drummer than a piano player. What's up?" He said, "My drummer hurt his arm surfing. Can you fill in?" And that,
Wow.
it goes to the
Wow,
point
man.
where every single musician that has a career of some sort has their own individual story.
Yeah.
No two are alike. Like, if I didn't go to this community college, I probably wouldn't have gone to the University of Miami.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Taking a piano, improv course, I wouldn't have met Steve Morse. So I wonder, 50 years later, which is, September will be 50 years since I graduated from the University of Miami. I wonder if I'd still be a musician.
Yeah, it's those kinds of things you do wonder. I know, like you say, because it's all those things were so dependent upon the other, like each step. And what a cool story.
Right. I think, most lucky breaks
Wow.
don't necessarily happen when you think they are.
Yeah,
It might feel like it's just another mundane moment. Why can't I have something happen, right? And so it goes back to me always encouraging young musicians to not sit at home. You sit at home to practice and work on your instrument, but just try to be out there playing with as many different musicians as you can, and going, when you're of age, going to as many different clubs that have live music, and especially that have open mic nights so you can sit in and get seen and heard.
that's great advice. That's great advice. And the obvious part of that also too, like just playing with other musicians and understanding, your role as a drummer and being able to play with other people where, there's a lot, there's like a, I think it's different from when you and I were younger, where there were like a lot of places where we could play, we could join a band and play gigs. But nowadays, a lot of a lot of kids never really leave their drum room, their house. And like you say, getting out there open mic night lets you kind of understand the importance of playing with a bass player. Like, oh shit, I need to like really listen to this guy and listen to what he's playing and maybe adapt my feel to what he's doing, or all those things that you automatically like are just come naturally to you. But I think for young drummers, it's not as simple, I think, as it was back then, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And technology has caused a lot of it. Technology has an amazing upside in that you can have a recording studio in your own home,
Yeah.
for not too much expense. But then a lot of people become, homebodies because they can do everything in their room, um, but it's not getting them out there meeting other people to play
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, exactly. One of the questions I was going to ask you, Rod, it's a, um, did you know right away when you started off playing drums, did you start off playing left-handed? I mean, do you do a lot of stuff left-handed anyway? So was that just wasn't a unusual to you that you played this way?
Yeah, no, I set my drums up like I saw Ringo set his
Yeah.
drums up. So I played right-handed, but fortunately, within a few months, I was taking private lessons. And this man, Howie Mann, he instantly saw that when I played a drum fill, I would crash the cymbal with my left hand, holding the stick in the traditional manner. He saw
Hmm.
me doing all my leading with my left hand, even though my right hand was on the ride cymbal and the hi-hat. So I credit him with turning me around. Now, this is before that open-handed um,
Yeah.
way of playing came about first, with Billy Cobham and then everybody else that followed. So it was only for a few months, if that I was playing right-handed.
Yeah. And once you switched to left-handed, full left-handed, um, did you still develop like work on your right hand and sort of, I'm guessing you still, as part of your development, you still tried to develop your right hand and
Uh, Not that much. I wish I had, because there's certainly nothing wrong in being ambidextrous. And
yeah.
so sometimes when I'm practicing just for the challenge of it, I will try to do that. And since I have a double pedal, I'll try to, just use my right foot to play beats. And boy, oh boy, is it an eye opener in terms of how much further along your strong side is from your weak side.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I sometimes will sit in on a right-handed set and just, yeah, I mean, and I'm not you obviously, but and you realize how limited I really am, just trying to play on a right-handed set with my right foot on the bass drum and my left hand on the hi-hat. And yeah, it's most of the times they'll say, no, I don't want to sit in. Thanks anyway. But
I hate to sit in, right? I I go out of my way to not sit in, but I have found myself in situations where I'm just forced into it. Um, so like if I'll say if I go to a club to see someone perform. And then they go, hey, look who's in the audience. Come on up, Rod. I go, no, 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 no. So I go on the stage and then I try to explain to the drummer, look, I play left-handed. I have to completely oh, no problem. Don't worry about it. So now, it takes like 10 minutes or so. We start arranging, and it's like I have to lower and why do you have to do that? Why do you have to do that? Why can't you just play? Can't you just play? And I go, here I am. I also feel that when a drummer sits in, they are, and I'm not telling drummers to not do it. This is me. I
Yeah.
just feel like I am in a lose-lose situation where uh, if I'm put in a position where it's like, look who's here. Oh, this is someone who is somebody, even if I haven't heard of them. Oh, so this is some well-known kind of guy. Now I'm going to play on someone's drum set that I've never had a minute to feel. All eyes are on the drummer, and
Yeah.
I haven't necessarily practiced that day. To this day, when I am out on the road playing a concert, I will not hit the stage unless I've had the sticks in my hand for an hour or two. And even with that, it's two or three songs before everything starts to settle in. And so,
Yeah.
no matter what happens when I sit in a situation that I don't want to be in, there's no one in the audience that's going to go, wow, this guy is something else. And then on top of it, if even if I play one song, I'm soaking wet, and now my night out has been ruined because I'm in damp clothing. So this is a great story. So in one of the last years when I was teaching up at Berkeley in Boston, it was a Tuesday night. I taught there on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and I got a phone call from a friend named Janet Rains, who was a great singer, and she unfortunately passed away. She was dating Greg Allman at the time, and she said, "Hey, Ron, are you in Boston?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just finishing up teaching." She said, "The Allman Brothers are doing a few nights down the block at the Orpheum. You want to come to the show?" So I said, "Sure." So I went to the Orpheum, and I know some of those guys from all the years of touring. The Dixie Dregs were a Southern band. We did
Sure.
those with the Allman Brothers and Chuck Leavell's side project, Sea Level. Um, and so they sat me on the stage, and JMO, one of the drummers, whose
Yeah.
drums stage right, was on the side where they sat my chair. Now, the Allman Brothers are a jam band. They do two long sets. So after their first hour and a half, they took a 20-minute intermission. I went backstage, blah, 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 blah. We're having a really nice time chatting. Now they come out to take the stage for the second set, and JMO points me to come over to him on the drum rise. I go, "What's up, JMO?" He goes, "What song are you sitting in on?" And I'm looking at his right-handed drum set in a
Yes.
theater filled with 3,000 some odd people. Oh my God. So I looked at the set list. Now, I've only played in original bands. So if someone calls a cover song, I've heard it, I know the song, but I don't know how it begins, how it ends, and any of the specifics in the song. So I'm looking at this Allman Brothers list, and I said, "How does Hotlanta go?" And he goes, "Da-da-da-da-da-da." I'm like, "Great, great." So now I know it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, da-da-da. That's all I know. Now,
Yeah.
fortunately, they also had Butch Trucks, so they're a double drumming band and a percussionist. And so I said, you know what? It's going to be okay because Butch is the power drummer.
Yeah.
JMO jazzer who, like, if he saw a piece of lint on the floor in the middle of the song, he would put his sticks down, pick up the lint, look at it, put it back down, pick up his stick, start playing. All right. So time for Hotlanta. And I'm like, oh, knotted up, twisted. So JMO comes down, hands me his fat, like three
Right.
drumsticks. He plays with huge drumsticks. And I'm walking up the riser trying to figure out how am I going to play on this right-handed drum set. And his drum tech, whose name also happened to be JMO,
JMO. Yeah.
Rod, forgot to tell you in the middle of the song, you and Butch do a drum solo, right? And he said, you ready for this? You're going to get a kick out of this. You trade sixes, threes, and ones. Okay, well, there's no such thing as sixes, threes. There are ones. There are eights, fours, twos, and ones. There's no such thing as a six, a three, and a one. So I said, okay, great, thank you. And in my mind, as you know, the schooled musician with the looking down my nose, like, oh, I know. I figured he probably meant fours, twos, and ones, but the song is in six,
Mm.
right?
Ah,
And
yeah.
so, all right, so the song starts. First, I just tried to sit with the snare like this and the bass drum on my right foot, the hi-hat over here. I dropped the hi-hat clutch and went, this isn't working. So then I shifted and straddled the floor tom and played the hi-hat like this. And, the drum solo, the one other thing I asked the drum tech as he was telling me, you're trading sixes, threes, and ones. I said, who goes first? Please tell me it's Butch. So I
It's
know
fun.
what it is. Otherwise I wouldn't know what a six is. How long do I play? So he said, Butch goes first. I went, great. And it turned out to be two fours, two twos, two ones.
Yeah, yeah. Oh
And
man.
yeah, so yeah, that's my sitting in story. And I hope I never have to sit in again. Anyway.
I was at they I think they did I remember when they played there. They played there a bunch of times, but I remember in the 2000s them playing like 3 nights and I was there one night and I think they told me, were you there when Kenwood Denard was there too? Or was that a different night?
I
I
don't
think
remember seeing Kenwood.
I know JMO, the drum tech, and I know, of course, JMO and the late great Butch, but I didn't get to see you play. That would have been fun to see you. I'm sure it sounded great, man. You can't not sound great. Sorry, but
But
you,
like when you're at 75% or 50% of what you're capable of, you don't, at least I don't want to have to be in front of the public. That's all.
yeah, I totally get it. I understand. Well, talking about when you mentioned Steve Morse and you had told me that when we first connected a few weeks ago that this year is 50 years that you graduated, and that's really, I mean, Dixie Dregs had been around for a little while before that, but really that was the beginning of the band, really, wasn't it?
Yes.
50 years ago. And so maybe just talk about that a little bit and just those early, like I just, I, when I listened to that music and I had started to do a deep dive back into it in the last couple of weeks since we've been talking, and it's like the creative juices that you guys had in those days must have just been like nonstop. It sounds like everybody was just coming up with innovative ideas and like you said, the influences of like Mahavishnu, but you guys were so groundbreaking in what you were doing. I just
It was a very exciting period. Steve Morse is the writer of the Dixie Dregs music. Now, fortunately, being a drummer, um, most non-drummers don't really know what to ask of a drummer because we play a different instrument. It's a different animal
right.
when you're figuring out how to create your rhythms and how to place them uh, throughout your drum set. So, Steve uh, would have a new song, and then the way things would work is, he would take 10, 20 minutes to show a few measures to Andy, the bass player, and then a few measures to Alan, the violinist, a few measures to the keyboard player, whether it was T. Lavids or Mark Parrish or Steve Davidowski. And I would just be sitting there as they're learning the few measures and start formulating ideas. And then, Steve would always say, yeah, Sticks, you know what to do. Just, you know,
Okay.
do your thing. Um, and that was the process. It usually took, a full long day or 2 days or 3 days to learn a song. Now, naively, all of us just thought, how hard should it be to get a record deal? We're playing this cool music. I mean, you can't really tap your foot to it in a lot of places, and there's no singer. but most people don't really care about that, right? Like this is just great
Yeah.
melodic instrumental music. Well, every door was shut, slammed in our face in the beginning, right? So here, we had all these altruistic, just amazing dreams of how easy it was going to be. And Steve and Andy and Andy was our bass player, is our bass player. Uh, we went door to door in New York City. We got the names and addresses of like 30, 35 record labels. And with this demo album that we had done back in
Yeah.
the University of Miami, um, we'd say, "Hi, we're a band. Can we meet with your A&R person?" And with the exception of two or three places, they just said, "Here, give us your record, give us a contact address, goodbye." Um,
Mhm.
the people at Reprise Records that had Jethro Tull and Robin Trower, and they were less corporate than a lot of these other companies. They brought us in and we sat with an A&R person. It was very nice. And then someone at CTI Records, that was that jazz label that started
Yeah.
doing, sort of like pop jazz
Yep.
um, kind of music. They were nice enough and let us come in and sat with us. But at the end of the day, about a month later, we had 30 some odd rejection letters tacked to the wall. And so it was a dejected feeling, but I think for most of us in the band, it made our determination even stronger to prove the world wrong. Now, we even had the manager of Weather Report when we were playing at some college convention where you're trying to get gigs at colleges.
Yeah.
He heard us and we're like, "Oh, this is the manager of Weather Report." He said, "Yeah, guys, give it up. It's not worth it."
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So even someone like that was managing like the highest profile
Yeah.
jazz fusion band at the time, along with Mahavishnu Orchestra. Yeah. Said it's really not worth the effort. And, so um,
Yeah.
ultimately what happened was, I mean, we had some interesting experiences. I had an experience with Bobby Colomby, the drummer from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I had sent him the record and, because his name and address is on the back of Jaco Pastorius's breakout album. So I sent him our demo and he called me
Wow.
up and said, "Hey, Rod, I'm coming to Atlanta on some business. If you and anyone in the band wanted that." And so we met Bobby Colomby. It ultimately didn't work out, as it also, we connected with Al Cooper,
Hmm.
right, from Super Session and the Blues Project, who actually was a colleague of mine at Berkeley.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. I met Al
So
there. Yeah.
that didn't work out. But on another occasion, again, we're just on this circuit for like a year, year and a half in the Southeast playing little clubs for $100. We're playing a place in Nashville called the Exit Inn, and we're in the middle of the set, and someone in the band calls a band meeting and said, "Look who's sitting at the bar." And it was Chuck Leavell, the piano player from the Allman Brothers. This is
Yeah.
like 1976. And we kicked it into high gear, finished the set. Chuck, who was with someone who we didn't know who it was their production manager, Twigs Linden, who a year later took us under his wings, you know,
Wow.
and protected us and taught us how the whole thing works on the road. But they came over to us and said, "Who are you guys? Where could we buy your records?" And we said, "We don't have a record deal." And they said, "You have a record deal now because first thing in the morning, we're calling Phil Walden, the president of Capricorn Records, and he's going to sign you." And later that year, we were signed. And
Wow.
again, it goes back to how does it happen? How did you make it in the business? Well, I don't know. I just made sure that I wasn't sitting at home twiddling my thumbs, waiting for the phone to ring or for something to happen. I just happened to be with my band making $100 for the band,
Yeah.
meaning maybe each of us made $7 for the night because we had to buy a hotel room where everybody crams in the one room and
Yeah.
gas and food. Um, Somebody famous just happened to be in a bar when we were on stage. And, like they said to us, they said, "We just came to hear some local country music. We didn't know we were going to hear some like mind-blowing instrumental fusion.
I know, I know. That's
Oh,
such a great
yeah,
story. Oh my God.
that's how the record deal happened.
Well, I'm going to play something from. I don't know if it's probably not the first record, but I mentioned to you off the air that the first record that I recall came out in 1978. What if? First record I recall being turned on to you guys, and like you say, it was just this mind blowing. I admit at the time, Rod, that I was 17, 18 years old in 1978, and I had very limited exposure to music other than Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Allman Brothers and bands like that. So I'd kind of recently discovered Mahavishnu and I was broadening my horizons and a guy that was in a band with me at the time was into Rush, was really into you guys when Rush had just kind of started. And I remember it was like the first time I heard Billy Cobham, it was a similar thing. When I heard you, it was like, holy shit, why have I not been listening to this music all this time, you know? And then when I saw a picture of you, I think in like a Rogers drum ad, right? You were playing Rogers at that
Yes.
time?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I realized you were left-handed and I thought, oh man, it just gets better. This guy, I mean, I keep harping on the lefty thing, but it was just such a cool thing to see, that you were a left-handed drummer and you were, playing this incredible music. But I had a point I was going to make that I think you guys are all probably you and Steve and T. Lavitz, rest his soul. You guys were probably all about the same age, right?
Yeah.
More or less. And I think, you guys grew up at a time when it was such a great time to be a young musician. I feel like looking at you're a few years older than me, and all that music was so new. Like you said early on, they were creating the music, like Mitch Mitchell with Jimi Hendrix and Ginger Baker with Cream. And you guys too, to a certain extent, were like creating this new genre of music that, it's some people got it, some didn't. That
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And we tried to, make fusion music a little bit more easy listening
yeah. Yep.
by having it follow a song format, and every time a new section comes in, there's a different orchestration with it, or a melody is now harmonized the second time it comes around. But as much as we loved the bands in that fusion arena, uh, a lot of times a guitar solo or a keyboard solo would just go on and on and on. And for a musician, it's amazing. But for someone who doesn't have any knowledge of music, that can tend to get a little
Yeah.
tedious. And
Yeah.
so in the Dregs format of doing things, solos were kept to 4 measures or 8 measures or 16 measures to just try to keep the listener in with us. And now,
Okay.
so I just want to tell you a funny story with Take
Yeah.
It Off the Top, which is the
Yeah.
song that you're going to play. This was on the Dregs' second album. So the album's called What If. We were not happy with how our first album turned out. We were very disappointed in the production. With this album, we were getting to work with Ken Scott, who at the time was one of the A-list engineer producers. So Ken's career started as a teenager, making coffee for the people that worked and the bands that recorded at Abbey Road Studios in
Hmm.
England. And he worked his way up to being an engineer. And then the day came where he was the lead engineer on the Beatles' White Album. From there, he went on to engineer and produce acts like Elton John, David Bowie, Supertramp, and then he was the guy that did all of those breakout fusion albums, right? Mahavishnu Orchestra albums, Stanley
Yeah.
Clark School Days,
Yep.
Billy Cobham Spectrum, Jeff Beck, There and Back,
Oh man.
everybody. So
Yeah.
we were so over the top excited to work with him, right? Okay, so we have one album under our belts. We're 23 years old, sort of. Um, a little bit of attitude, like, hey, I'm a recording musician. I've seen it all. Okay. So before he took us in the studio, he took us into a rehearsal facility so we could run down the music that we were thinking of recording. And Take It Off the Top was the first song we played for him. And by the time Ken finished mopping the floor with me, tearing apart what I had created for the song,
Oh,
I
wow.
hated, I despised him, right? At that moment, thinking, what does this guy know about anything? Like, um, and so the original drumming for that song probably had 5 times as many notes in the version that you heard. So that section
Wow.
that go I was going
Yeah.
by the time he was done with me, it was bass drum and ride cymbal going floor tom smoke was coming out of my ears. I really hated him. And then, we've had big laughs through the years when we run into each other.
That's as a 23-year-old, yeah, I get it, man. It's like, and I was going to ask you just to jump back for a second. Did you write all these parts out? Like when you created a part, I'm sure you probably notated it because you wanted to be able to
Nothing.
remember it. You
No,
didn't have to.
everything was just committed to memory.
You could memorize all those parts and not. Yeah,
Sure.
that's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's
Uh,
impressive. I
and
figured,
then through the years, when I got involved in teaching, there were certain uh, grooves or fills that I would scribble out, and then, well, I'd eventually hire a student to put it into some kind of
yeah,
finale form so it would be readable.
yeah, amazing. That's a great story though, and I say that in that he is such a legendary engineer and producer, um, but you were proud, I'm sure, of those original parts that you created for that song, and you're thinking like, he doesn't get it, he doesn't know, but I'll tell you what we're about to listen to, I think, is some of the most masterful drumming, and it's tasteful, and it's I think it's perfect for the tune. And so yeah, so this is "Take It Off the Top," Dixie Dregs from the album "What If," and as you said, the second record, and 1978. Rod, does that sound right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Here it comes. Take it off the top. Oh yeah.
Brings back memories.
Oh yeah. It must. It must, man. Just your playing is just so like just free and loose and fun. It just and I think if you let me if you'll permit me to say it, Rod, it's I think Ken it's like a happy medium there. You know, you still got to play lots of great stuff there and no doubt about that, you know.
You know, he taught me that the song is not all about any one instrument. He said,
Yeah.
you're bringing something special to the song, but you have to like respect the piece of music first and then bring to it what it needs, not throwing in all your coolest licks so that whatever drummers happen to be listening to it are going to hear it. It was
That's,
a
I mean,
very, very important lesson.
it is. It is. I know. And we laugh about it now, you know, and now at our, we're older and wiser, so to speak. But at age, you know, like when you're young you know, I think any drummer who can play the way you play, that would be a natural, I think that would be when you're playing that kind of music, that would be the natural instinct would be to want to, you know, throw in a lot of cool stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
understandable.
I'm very thankful that I had lessons like that throughout my career because they played a role in my, getting the gig with Winger.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about that too. I was going to play another. I'll come back. I did want to play a later Dregs tune that featured Alex Ligerdwood.
Lidgertwood,
Lidgerwood. Okay,
great
I never know how
singer.
to.
He
Great
sang,
singer.
he sang "I'm Winning," the Santana song.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that song and you know and I didn't realize I guess I'd heard this song but didn't realize that was him until I started doing some more research and realized that he sang on this tune and I guess on um, the record Industry Standard is where you had some vocals with Patrick Simmons from the Doobie Brothers and Alex. So, but I do want to talk about Winger for a second because that I was so happy to see you in that band from the standpoint of just being a fan and this commercial success that Winger had. And maybe you can just talk about how all that came together. That was in the mid to late 80s. So,
Yeah. So I graduated in 1975 in the fall and moved to the state of Georgia to
yeah.
start full time with the Dixie Dregs. And so for the next 11 years, first for like the first eight or so, the Dregs were a full time band. And
Yeah.
after the sixth album, the Industry Standard album, we decided to kind of part company as friends and reunite somewhere down the line. And so at that time, Steve asked me to continue playing with him in a trio. He wanted to start the Steve Morse Band.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
we did that in like 1983, 84, 85, culminating with really 3 months with opening for Rush on their Power Windows tour,
Oh
which
yeah.
that was an experience in and of itself, getting uh, to be friends with Neil Peart and Geddy Lee and Alex. They were such, you know, just upstanding guys that treated us as nicely as anyone would expect a support band to be treated. Um, but when that ended in early 1986, Steve got called by the group Kansas, who were reforming, but
Right.
their main guitarist, Kerry Livgren, didn't want to go back to it. And so they called Steve to see if he wanted to join their band. And so I said, Steve, you got to do this. So he joined Kansas. And then I found myself in the middle of 1986, um, you know, gigless. Wow. 11 years out of college. I mean, I thought the Dregs really were going to be my band till I
Yeah.
put the sticks down. So it was the first time in my life, in my 30s, that I had to figure out my next move. What do I do? So Michelle and I moved to New York. And in fact, Danny Gottlieb when I came up alone, and Michelle did, neither of us wanted to leave Atlanta. It was our new home. We loved it. So she said, "Why don't you go to New York and like feel things out?" So when I moved up there, Danny Gottlieb was getting ready to go out on tour for a month with John McLaughlin. I think they might have called it the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And he
Yeah.
said, "Here's the keys to my apartment." And so, me never having been an apartment dweller in my life, let alone New York City, I suddenly found myself from, having lived in houses with lots of open space and backyards to a studio apartment. And Danny, if you're listening, thank you so much. He left every pot and pan and dish dirty in the sink, dirty clothes. You know, there was no floor to be seen. Um, but it was so wonderful, like for me to get that experience of like being in New York City. And so I didn't know what to do. I had never planned for the day that there wasn't going to be a Dixie Dregs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, And so one thing led to another, where at least I had a name as a drummer. And so I was invited to go to sessions or to jam with musicians. And then it eventually got me involved with a Japanese management company that were grooming like a Boy George kind of artist
Yeah.
to, to do showcasing for record labels. And when that led nowhere, um, I gave the management my phone number and said, "Hey, look, I'm in New York. Let me know if anything new is on the table." And they called me one day and said, "Hey, our biggest artist is called Kitaro. He's a new age artist. He lives in Japan, but he's coming to the United States to do a big tour, like theaters. And he needs to put a band together. So come to our office next week to talk about it." So I went to their offices, and when I got there, they said, "We feel so badly. Kitaro, he flew to LA first, and he decided to choose all LA-based musicians." And they said, "You might know the name Casey Sherrill. He's going to be doing the tour on drums." I went, "Yeah, I know Casey Sherrill. He's a great drummer." Um, Years later, when Casey and I were colleagues at Berkeley, I went over to him and said, "Casey, I've been meaning to thank you for all these years." He goes, "For what?" I said, "For me not getting the Kitaro gig because I didn't get it. I got in Winger." And so the way that happened was, again, it's like everybody's got their
That's so
story.
great.
So I didn't know that there were any other people in the office when I was meeting with this management person. And as I was leaving, I overheard some kind of like metal music from another room. And I said, "Oh, well, what's that?" And this man said, "Oh, we have a 4-track deck and we're sort of managing, sort of not. We're just trying to help these two guys who keep doing demos and getting rejected from record labels in New York. Would you like to meet them?" I said, "Sure." Opens the door. There's Kip Winger. I don't know him. And Reb Beach.
Wow.
He doesn't know me, but he's freaking out because he
He
said,
knows who you are. Yeah.
"You don't know who this is, do you?" And Kip's like, Look at Red. He's like, "That's the drummer in the Dixie Dregs. He plays with Steve Morse. They're the greatest band." He's flipping out, which was great for me
Yeah.
because it turns out, Kip said, "Look, we've been rejected by every label twice already, and we're doing new demos. We're going to go for a third round, and we are not going to stop until we get signed." Um, but like Reb says, you're like this fusion guy, and like, this, we're like, metal or, melodic metal. And Reb's going, "We're not worthy, we're beneath you." Like, and I said, "Look, I'm not really looking to do another fusion thing. I'd love to go back to my roots and hit hard." And so Kip said, there's like 20, 30 drummers in New York that go to every audition for a band
Mm.
that needs a drummer for a recording or a tour. But he said, "Look, Reb is so excited. You want to just get together and jam next week?" And that's how that happened. And so when I
Wow.
went to the jam, this was interesting. I talked to myself before I went in the room. I said to myself, "I want to make sure that I don't turn them away by just playing too busy. So depending on what Kip starts playing on the bass, play what you think's appropriate. So I walked in, sat down, got comfortable, and Kip walked over to me and just started pumping eighth notes. Junk, 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 junk. So I just, did the bass drum on one and three, snare on two and four, hitting uncomfortably hard, sloshing the hi-hats. And after like 15 seconds, he stopped and he said, like, what are you doing? You're playing eighth notes. I'm playing what I think is appropriate. He goes, great. I see you could hit hard. That's wonderful. But Reb said you could do crazy stuff. And I said, well, I'm intentionally not doing that because I didn't want to scare you away. And he said, no, no, no. The reason you're here is because when we get signed, he said, I'm looking for ways that Winger can sort of sound like Kiss and Bon Jovi and, Motley Crue, but I want us to have elements in our band that those bands don't.
Yeah.
So not like, I'm going to be asking you to do your crazy fusion stuff all the time, but there are going to be songs and parts of songs where that's exactly what we're going to want you to do. So lose me. I went, you want
Yeah.
me to lose you? I said, yeah. So like, I didn't realize at the time, I didn't know anything about Kip. I come to find he's a schooled musician. He now writes symphonies. I've sat in Symphony Hall in Nashville 2 years ago, where the Nashville Symphony, which is one of the 10 best ranked orchestras in the country, they commissioned him to write his symphony number one. And he's finishing up his first violin concerto that they're going to be doing later this year. And I've also sat in the San Francisco Opera House watching the San Francisco Ballet dance to his ballet called Ghosts. So he's another one of those musicians that I've been so
Wow.
blessed to share my career with, who's on, that high level, like guys,
Yeah.
I played with so many uh, people like that. But that's how I got into the Winger camp. And then, not that many months later, he called me, he said, guess what? Atlantic Records signed us to a deal. Now, it wasn't a band yet. So he said, can we hire you to track drums? So I said, sure. And it was through the process of recording drums that friendships started happening. And then eventually, it was kind of like, hey, you want to make this a band? And then it went from there. But as
Yeah.
far them using me for some of the, the more fusion type concepts, when we cut that song 17, that we didn't know it was going to sell the band a million albums.
Yeah.
It was also going to be
Amazing.
the song that 4 years later destroyed us as the whole, hairband thing went downhill because of the lyrics, silly
Yeah.
lyrics. Um,
Yeah.
so I cut the drums once, and then they said, okay, cut the song again, but this time after the guitar solo where that riff, that's so funny. Reb Beach just texted.
Oh,
Um,
oh, that's awesome.
so when that riff happens, do something that a rock drummer would never do because they don't know how to do it. So I said, all right, I got this idea. So my idea was to displace the most basic beat by an eighth note. So instead of pa, pa, I went pa, 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 then back to pa.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're going pa, pa, ta, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. And then back to it. So 4 seconds, whatever. I can't tell you how many times when that album came out and we were on tour and meeting fans after the show, any and all musician fan would come over to me and say, what time signature is that in? Why did the world turn upside down? What's going on there? I've never heard that before. And that was a very, very pleasing
Yeah.
moment for me every time someone would be asking me about that little thing.
That's so cool. And he had the foresight to see that, like, let's do something that's just, that's not going to be expected by, a rock band, or what people think
Yeah.
is a, yeah. Yeah, that's
Right.
very cool.
And so I have a lot of freedom in Winger. And there's a certainly in the more recent years of the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh albums, there's progressive elements to it, especially since Kip has gotten so involved in his classical music.
Yeah, I had no idea, Rod, that he's that that he can score and writes symphonic pieces. That's incredible. Wow.
He was honored, it was about a year ago in Berlin, the Berlin Symphony, like they're recognized as the first or second best symphony in the world. They
Yeah.
It was the anniversary of oh my God, who did the Rite of Spring? The composer.
Oh
Uh,
boy.
um, oh my God,
Kelly would know.
Igor Stravinsky.
Ah, okay.
Okay,
Yes.
so they were honoring the 100-year anniversary or something of Igor Stravinsky, and they were doing one of his pieces, and they called Kip to say, because we also want to do Conversations with Nijinsky, which is one of his classical works that is based on Nijinsky, who choreographed The Rite of Spring. So Kip was honored, like they brought him on stage,
Wow.
like they did the Stravinsky piece and his classical piece.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's It really is. Didn't realize he had that kind of, pedigree, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Amazing.
yeah. Yeah, he's
Um,
immensely talented.
well, speaking of Winger, should we play Tin Soldier? That be
Yeah. This doesn't sound like Madeleine or 17. This is a more
yeah.
progressive side to the band.
I love it. And here it comes.
It's all the same, and suddenly you see the frame, but turn away. Faces in time, that's when I was your hero. Wrap my soul in cellophane, drown my secrets in the rain.
Man, what a track.
Love that. Everybody should watch the video of that. It is so spectacular. Our friend Dan put that whole thing together. It's a great storyline, magical.
Okay, I'll put a link to it in the show notes of this.
Oh, great.
Directly to it, yeah. And I want to get to a couple tunes before where time goes by so quick, and I so appreciate all your time today, Rod. And I want to talk about some of your inventions that are really important for drummers, and we'll get to that in a second. But I did want to play this tune that you did for Modern Drummer magazine for Drum Nation when they were doing these compilation CDs years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And this was from Drum Nation Volume 1, and it's
This is me and my buddy Jordan Rudis, who, when we first met, he was the world's best kept secret, except, being this NAM show demo guy for keyboard companies, right? It's like, you got to go see this guy, Jordan Rudis. And then we had him play with the Dixie Dregs back in '95 for a few legs when we needed someone for the keyboard spot. And then most recently, when the Dixie Dregs toured last year, Jordan played keyboards with us. So
Yeah.
it was so nice for he and I to be able to hang again, because he's so busy with Dream Theater. And I'm so excited for all the success that they're having and that he's had with them. So I had written this piece of music, or I'd written like 90% of it. And when I was contacted to do it, I called Jordan and said, hey, you want to work together on this? And he said, sure. And so in the middle of the song, because it was a song for a drum album, they said, we want the drums to have a feature in it. And so I created like a rhythmic drum pattern, part of like a drum solo. So when it happens in the song and you only hear the drum set, it's a specific series of rhythms. Then I do it again, but the one piece that I needed Jordan's help in to create was to just come up with wild and crazy jazzy kinds of chords just to fit the rhythm. So that was, Jordan's, part in the writing of the song. And so I came up with the title Faceless Pastiche because it is a term that was used to describe the Dixie Dregs music way back when our first album came out. And, all of the reviews were beautiful, very positive, until this one review came out. And I think it was in Rolling Stone magazine. And it wasn't even a review of our album. They were reviewing the band Stuff with Steve Gadd,
Steve Gadd.
The guys. And they weren't giving that a very, stellar review. But they just kind of stuck in there. They said, as not so great as this album is, it's better than this new band, Dixie Dregs, whose music is a faceless pastiche. Meaning, what are you? Are you a jazz band? Are you a rock band, a country band, a classical?
Yeah.
What are you? And our whole thing was, well, the charm of the Dixie Dregs is that we're eclectic.
Yeah.
We don't fit in a category. It's just music.
Right.
But the reviewer hated us.
That's
I thought just as my little, whatever.
And that seems so typical, doesn't it, of the 70s, of like, having to be put in a bag. God forbid, like you say, you're an eclectic band that, it's like we play all this stuff. It's a conglomerate of all these things, and are you rock? Are you fusion? Are you jazz? Are you whatever? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have a fiddle player. Are you country? Are you? Yeah. I know. It's well, this tune is great. This really, I remember when Modern Drummer was doing these, and it's a great sounding track. And as you say, it's called Faceless Pastiche. Now we know why. And and here it comes. I need a producer, Rod, if you know anybody.
And I'm going to air drum that
All right, cool.
part when it comes in, okay?
All right, here it comes. Man, what a tune. What a tune.
Jordan is so amazing. I love you know, when the melodies are harmonized, but then triple harmonies, three notes.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, great part. And just amazing drumming, tasteful,
Thank you.
just yeah, incredible. Well, Rod, we'll come back and play some music when we wrap things up, but I want to talk about some of these cool products that you've got. First of all, this guy right here, which you were kind enough to send me, the wing thing, and I'll let you describe it. Although I think people can probably, and by the way, a bunch of people watching have commented about it that have it and love it. So yeah, the wing thing.
The wing thing. So, I think every drummer, no matter what style of music they play, at one time or another will come up with a handful of issues that they have to deal with on their drum set. All right, so one of those problems or issues has to do with the wing nuts, of which there are many in a drum set. Like a regular cymbal stand has four wing nuts, a boom arm cymbal stand has five, and if you put a clamp on it to have a little thing coming
Yeah,
off, it has nine, right? So one stand can have nine wing nuts on it. So I have found through my 60 years of being a drummer, um, if I haven't loosened a wing nut in a while, it is virtually impossible to loosen by hand. And so
yeah,
I've hurt my fingers and my hand. And so what does a drummer do? They take their pair of drumsticks and clumsily put one on top of the wing nut, one on the bottom, and then try to kind of work it that way. It slides off a lot. Once in a while, I hit myself in the head. Um, and then in terms of tightening wing nuts, sometimes tightening them by hand does not do the job. And so, before I had this device, so it doesn't matter when you're practicing, but when you're up on stage playing a concert and you slam a cymbal and all of a sudden the tilter wing nut loosens up. So now the cymbal is doing
yeah,
180.
absolutely.
And then either you or if you have a tech, they have to come running on stage to kind of fix it up. Uh, the really good story with tightening a wing nut, or not tightening it enough, is with the hi-hat. So a hi-hat has a cymbal on the bottom and a cymbal on top, and then the cymbal on top is held on the rod with a wing nut, right? So I would always crank it as much as I can, and then start playing. And now if my foot is going, if I'm not paying attention, sometimes I'll notice like I'm not feeling the impact, and then I look and what's happened to the cymbal? The top cymbal has
Yes.
gone way up on the rod. Okay, so now try to do with the sticks, the clumsiness. I never ever seem to have like a pair of pliers or whatever after all these years of playing. It's still just never had the tools. And so 40 years ago, I had the idea of like, hey, you know what? Why not like a drummer's toolkit?
Mm,
And I brought the idea around to many people, and then it just never kind of turned into anything. So about 5 years ago, Winger was playing in Pittsburgh, and a friend of mine, someone who became a friend after first being really like a huge fan of mine, when Michelle and I moved to New York City, for me to start making some money, I started teaching at the Drummers Collective on
right.
14th and 6th, right? And so one day, guy comes in, introduces himself, and he's a drummer turned businessman who lives in Michigan, flew from Michigan. So every 2 weeks, he'd fly to New York to take a 2-hour lesson with me. What started as an acquaintanceship turned into a friendship. We stayed in touch through the years from 1986. So fast forward to like 2018. Uh, he drove down from Michigan to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Winger had a day off before we were performing. And so we went to dinner. He took me to the most amazing Thai restaurant I've ever been to in my life. It was sensational. And so I don't know how it even came up, but I brought up like this, survival tool concept to him. And that was the beginning. I finally found a human being who saw what I was seeing. And what first started as just regular conventional tools that you could buy at a hardware store, it kind of morphed into no, like, why don't we design one of a kind tools specifically for drummers? And
Yeah.
like, let's focus on like the first tool dealing with wing nuts. And so it took, I mean, it was probably 3 or 4 years, first beginning with manufacturers in China, because, like, everybody that's in business says, oh, no, you can't make things in the US, it's
Yeah.
too expensive. We eventually decided to just go for it and said, you know what? There's something to be said for you know, products that can be designed right under our own roof. And so we made the decision, as expensive as it's going to be, which is like considerable, let's do it. And we're so happy that we made that decision because, we really feel like we've come up with something special. And also, to my partner Jim's credit, when we started working together, he said, "You know what, Rod? Like all of the bands and musicians that you've worked with are like top shelf players, and everything that you do, like to him, I'm not talking about myself. He said, like it has class, and you have respect from your peers and people in the industry, and so like." Let's not spare any expense then. Like, let's not make it
Yeah.
cheesy.
Yeah.
Anything. So let's make a like the top quality tool. And so here we are. I've gotten some really, really wonderful comments from people who have it. And so Mike Mangini, I had sent him a tool, and then like he just recently, I think, like posted a clip. Like there's nothing not to love. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it just slides over any wing nut on any drum set,
Yeah.
and it does the job. Mike Tirana, do you know who Mike is?
I know. Sure. I know, Mike. Yep.
Amazing, hard-hitting drummer who,
Yeah.
played with Yngwie Malmsteen, and he's got Ray Luzier from Korn, and I have to tell this great story. So, about a year ago, Jim, my partner, gets a phone call from someone saying, "Hi, I'm the buyer for Metallica." So Jim said, "Metallica has a buyer?" And they said, "It's a big organization. Hundreds of people work for Metallica." Well, Lars Ulrich's drum tech, Jimmy Clark, is like raving about some kind of tool that you had. We need 6 of them because on their current tour, there are 4 drum sets scattered around the stage, and he wants a tool for each drum set, and he wants a couple for himself. And uh, so we have since spoken with Jimmy, and I don't have my phone on. If I turned it on, I could show you. So we've kind of like become phone friends, and he sent me a text with a photograph of the What If album, and he goes, "Take it off the top, best song ever." So like he's a Dregs fan. He's Lars Ulrich drum tech. Um, he's also apparently like a really good drummer in his own right, having played with Joan Jett and
Yeah.
Monroe and Deborah
I know
Harry.
Jimmy.
Oh,
Yeah.
you do?
I
Great.
do from a long time. I was going to say, I thought maybe you knew him because he's from New York. I knew him when he was in New York back in the 80s, and really good drummer, really solid pocket groove, great drummer. Yeah. And a
Yeah, I
good dude.
look forward to meeting him in person. And in
Yeah.
fact, I do know that he lived in New York because when Van Romain and Van is the drummer with a lot of band, but with
Yeah.
Steve Morse band,
Steve.
when we toured together last year, we do this double drum solo. And so we got together in New York back in March to run through it. And then somehow Jimmy's name came up, and Van said, "Jimmy, he's my buddy. We used to ride motorcycles together." So we called him up.
Oh, that's great.
Well,
What a great
it's a small world.
It's a small world. And I remember that he was working for Lars, but I just got to say, you hit the nail on the head, Rod, with this. It's so well made. It really is like super high quality. It's not like you said, there's so much junk out there. And, you see stuff on QVC
Right.
and you buy it because you think it looks great. And then you get it in your hands and it's junk. This is so solid and so well made and it works perfectly. And, I've used it for other things too. My little boom mic stand here that I've got, it's got a wing nut on it and I can never get it tight enough. But just earlier today, I was just kind of using it for some other stuff. It's a great tool.
Yeah, I
And
have had a couple of guitar techs tell me they use it with their rigs in some capacity. And so if anybody's interested in like reading about it, they can go to morgensteintool.com. That's where there's all kinds of info. Also, on the site, it lists 30 some odd drum shops that are carrying it. And then we also sell it directly from the website. And then another thing that I'm really excited about, sometime next month, 55 guitar centers will start carrying it. They call them their drum destination stores.
yeah,
And
fantastic.
if things go well with that, they'll add them to their other 290 whatever stores. And so Guitar Center also has Musician's Friend,
Yeah,
and and now it recently became available on Amazon, and then hopefully later this year, Sweetwater. So it it's a
that's
very
great.
exciting time for me and my partner right now.
Congratulations, Rod. So well deserved. If I could give you one bit of advice, I
Yeah,
I think you've made it too well. You need to make it so eventually it'll break, so people have to buy more. Because I don't think this is ever
I
going to
know, I know.
break.
It comes with a lifetime guarantee, even if you're
Yeah.
not the original owner.
Wow, that's a
I,
great.
I
That's
think short of putting a chainsaw to it, it's certainly not breakable,
no,
used around a drum set.
no, it's not. It's you'll have this for life, absolutely. And I want to thank you, and I think a million drummers want to thank you for giving Vic Firth the idea of these isolation headphones that everybody loves and uses. These are lifesavers, man. These are, and my grandkids love these.
Ah, the kid phone. That's so great. And
So yeah,
it, most inventions come about because of a need. I was thinking about before we went live how when the airlines used to carry like the Brookstone magazine,
yeah,
uh, with all these inventions, I'd thumb through it and not understand how I even managed to live to this point without 30 of the things in there.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
necessity is the mother of invention. And so back in 1989, when Winger was touring for the first album, we did a hundred shows with Cinderella and the Bullet Boys, an arena tour. And every night, uh, to close the show down, all three bands would be on stage doing a couple of Rolling Stone songs. And I would get off stage and my ears would be ringing insanely, but I'd go to sleep, wake up the next day, and the ring, it was gone, right? And
Yeah,
so you don't
yeah.
think anything of it. Well, right towards the end of those 100 shows, it was the first week in August 1989. I'll never forget it. I woke up the next morning and the ring was there. And how many years ago is that? Like 30,
35.
still ringing.
Yeah,
And that was the wake up call to start protecting my ears. And so, the way that I didn't just come up with an idea, hey, how about an earmuff with speakers in it? I had to start learning some new music for the next Winger record. And I remember back when we had Walkmans
yeah,
with either before CDs, like with cassettes or CDs, and they had these little cheesy headphones. So when I had started teaching at the Drummers Collective, another uh, student had come in and he had these orange gun range phones, and he gave me a pair because he said they'll help protect your ears and they really make the drums sound cool too, crisp, low endy. And so I was using the Walkman. I'd put the headphones on upside down and then put these orange phones over it. It wouldn't seal it 100%, but it sealed it enough to where I could lower the volume on the
yeah.
Walkman to learn the music. And it didn't happen in the moment. It was like a week or two or three later where ding,
Yeah.
Oh my, what if we put speakers in an orange, And
Yeah.
I brought the idea at a NAMM, the next NAMM show. I told like to every microphone company, every headphone company, every electronic company that I could think of, and every one of them said, "There's no market for it, Rod. Forget it." And then when I mentioned it to Vic, he
Yeah.
said, "You might be onto something."
I will say this, that he really, he first of all, he listened. He was always open to listening to ideas and suggestions, and he just had a great ability to cut through a lot of that. Like you say, that he could look ahead to the future and think, yeah, there's a place for this. There could be a place for this. And here we are all these years later, like you say, and there's like such an integral part. When you think about, everybody uses these now, in one shape or form.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're welcome. Uh, and as far as the tool company, we do have a second tool that's like it's in the pike, and hopefully we will get it out later this year.
Okay. Is it something you don't want to talk about at the moment? Is it
Yeah, probably best to
okay?
not speak about right
We'll
now.
we'll wait on that. And someone asked about the price, and I think it's $59 is the retail, right, for the wing thing. Yep.
Yeah.
Great. And lifetime guarantee. And yeah, I mean, unless you lose it, you'll never have to get another one of these. And I think you got to think about that, Rod. You got to, I don't know.
That's right. We have to work in the planned obsolescence or
No, let's play another tune. And I want to thank you for being so generous with your time today. I told you it'd be about an hour, and and we could go on and on and on. We got so much to talk about, and I'm so honored to have you here with me today. I just, you're a
thank you
treasure,
so
man.
much. It's great
Thank
being.
you. Thank you. Well, let's play. Got a couple other choices. We could play another Dixie Dregs tune. We could play. There's the Jelly Jam too. If
Yeah,
you want to
let's
play,
do that.
yeah, let's play that. That's
Yeah,
great.
so the Jelly Jam is a power trio with John Mayung, who is Dream Theater's bassist, and Ty Tabor, who is the guitarist and vocalist with King's X.
Right
And
on.
is this the King's?
Yes, this is I Am the King.
I Am the King. Okay, so when when I'm getting ready to like do an album, or if music hasn't been written yet, on my drives back and forth to Berkeley, which was like a 5 hour ride, 240 some odd miles, I would sometimes set the cruise control and then try to create like interesting drum patterns. And in the case of this song, uh, the main groove to the song was the first thing that happened. So like I spent hours just with the steering wheel and my
Wow.
feet, which were free. And then when Ty, John, and I got together to start creating music, I said, "Hey guys, like I got this groove that we got to be able to do something with it." And within minutes, the song happened.
Came together. Yeah.
It
Isn't that
started
great
with
when
the drum beat.
this is I Am the King, the Jelly Jam, and we're gonna wrap things up here. Here we go. Man, that was a great pattern.
The thing that makes it work with the drums being so syncopated is the vocal line is just going da da da
Yeah,
da da, and then there's all this wacky, syncopated stuff going on between the kick and snare.
yeah. It doesn't feel like it's an odd time. It
Right.
feels like, yeah, it feels like it's just a flowing groove.
So it's
Yeah.
like deceptively simple. Someone who's not a musician, who's just like a casual music listener, they might actually be able to listen to it and go, yeah, hey, that's a nice song.
Absolutely. No, but I know what you were going for there. Yeah, where it's very melodic and listenable in terms of like, yeah, having a wider appeal to an audience. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So as a drummer, or for a drummer that comes from a background of not just playing, the tried and true patterns with backbeat on 2 and 4, that likes to play weird stuff. It's so great to kind of sneak in
Mm.
weird, tricky things and get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well done, Rod. Well, man, thank you so much for being here today. This has been just a pleasure and an honor. And I want to remind everybody that I'm going to put in the show notes. This is going to be up on YouTube. I'll put all the information on how you can buy a wing thing and some other notes in there too. I'm going to mention in there the link to your book, Rod, the drum set musician.
Oh, yeah, and there's also drum set warm-ups. I think it's the only drum set warm-up book of its kind. And then the other thing I want to mention is I teach a course
Yes.
called Rock Drums that's part of Berkeley College's online conservatory or whatever they call it. And I guess you could go to berkeley.edu or online.berkeley.edu and search for rock drums. And so it's a 12-week course. And if you want to take it for 3 college credits, you can. But if you also just want to take it for whatever reason, it's available that way too. And I teach it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I saw. I'll make sure I put a link in there for that as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And will you be on tour this
Yeah.
summer with?
So Winger starts in February. We'll be doing a few shows in the States, and then in March or earlier March, we do the Monsters of Rock cruise.
Oh
We've
yeah.
been doing for years. It's crazy. It's 5 days of 40 to 45 bands. So music is going on somewhere on the ship. It's like this year, Winger and Extreme, and I'm not sure, maybe Michael Schenker, Stephen Piercy from Rat, Tesla.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going on it's so much fun, and it sells out way in advance, the 3,000
Right.
or so tickets for people to do it. And then right after then we're going to Japan for a few shows, and then from Japan to Australia, which will only be the second time we've ever been to Australia. So looking
Oh,
forward to
that.
that. And then some other things following that.
Yeah, that'll be huge. Wow. Going to be a busy guy.
Yeah,
Another,
yeah. No,
another,
no complaints here. The
yeah,
travel is not always fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But once there, we're all still great friends. Uh,
That's huge.
that's nice. It makes it a lot of fun.
It sure does. Well, hang with me for 1 second. We'll say goodbye. Thanks for watching, everybody. A big hand for Rod Morgenstein, legendary Rod Morgenstein. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you soon. And Rod, hang with me if you would.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's my show. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, leave me a comment. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can listen to the podcast on all podcast platforms. And a reminder, Live from My Drum Room t-shirts are available in sizes extra small to double XL. They're $25 in the US. That includes shipping. Here is my Venmo payment information at John-DChristopher-2. And don't forget to include your size and your shipping address. Very important information. 100% of the proceeds for all t-shirts go toward a scholarship I've created with the Percussive Arts Society. You're donating to a great cause when you buy one of these t-shirts. So once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Remember, no drummers are harmed on any episode. And drummers, when in doubt, leave it out. See you soon.